When you incorporate it in a real way consistently, your mind changes, your brain changes, your body changes, your confidence changes, and you become bolder.
Tell me about your new book, Bigger, Better, Bolder. How do we become more bold? I think it's an awesome proposition and a cool topic to cover in a book. Live the life you want, not the life that you get.
So that's a very big question. And the truth of the matter is, it's a very simple, easy answer, which is you need to practice. So my entire message and why I wrote this book is that I think boldness is a skill that people can harness and get good at, and it can actually change the entire trajectory of your life. And so it's not that complicated. And sometimes, a lot of times, people make things that are pretty simple overcomplicated and overthink them. And I think in a lot of this is that, in my belief anyway, that it's actually more important to be bold than it is to be smart to succeed. And I'm not just talking about success in a professional way, financial. I'm talking about in personal as well. And the reason why I wrote this, had the whole origin, I guess, story of this whole thing, was I did a TED Talk. And I did a talk about being bold and what it's done for my life and how it can really help anybody. And it just went viral. And people were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of it like that. And it kind of became like, the book became like the TED Talk on steroids. And I give people actionable ways to do it.
So what does it mean to be bold then? Just like to be a risk taker? Is that kind of what that implies?
No, being bold and taking risks are completely different. Being bold to me is about asking for what you want instead of just acquiescing to what's in front of you. So what happens, I think, a lot of times, and there's been a lot of research, I know you're a big research guy. There's a lot of research that even shows and proves that most people in life don't even make an attempt at whatever they want. They kind of just settle for what's in front of them, to the good enough, right? So my entire point is that people have to be a little bit more strategic in taking agency of their own life and kind of doing what that's right and authentic for them, as opposed to just like, you know what, I'll just date that person because they asked me out. Or I'll just like work at that job because on LinkedIn it was available. It's like, well, what do you really want to do? How do you really see your life going? Like, I believe life is not really about finding yourself. It's really about creating yourself. And
I love that.
It's the truth, right? And so people just a lot of times, they just walk through life kind of just taking whatever it is like they kind of like fall into. And then they wonder why they're not happy and they're not satisfied. They don't feel satiated. And so this is about getting people to a place where they can live a rich life in more than just money, but in relationships that are meaningful and satisfying, and in a job or a career that they actually want to be in, right? Because so much of our time is spent doing that. And it's kind of sad when you think about how many people are just kind of going through the motions of life.
Yeah. Doesn't society in a way kind of indoctrinate you into the belief that it's better to not be so bold, to not take risks and other different things, but to not essentially stick your neck out?
Yeah.
I feel like from a young age, that's what we're told, right? Like stand in line.
100%. This is exactly the entire thing, right? So, as a little kid, right, I was more naturally bold, than the next kid. And I would get in trouble for it all the time, right? And like people in life, that's what happens. People are told all the time, like, no, don't ask for that. That's rude. Or that's being, making it awkward or uncomfortable. Like people get uncomfortable so easily these days. You know what I mean? And so therefore we just kind of let ourselves just be in this box of, all right, well, I'll just do that because I don't want to make anybody else uncomfortable. I don't want to tote the line. But why? So like, to me, it's like, why do people have that ideology? And if they do that, that's why they're unhappy. So my point is to constantly push the envelope, always push the envelope, because that's how you actually achieve and get to those places. The people that actually have the most success are the people that don't just like stay in that little square, right? They were constantly, I hate to use this example because you'll probably get like, or I'll also, about Elon Musk, right? People are always on like how crazy he is with his Twitter thing, whatever else. Meanwhile, this guy he's like the biggest innovator of our time.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a huge fan.
I'm a huge fan of him too.
Yeah.
You know, and the reality is it's not the popular right now. It's not popular to like him. But if you really look at what he's doing and how he's doing it, it's exactly how I want to live my life and how I like. He's making his own decisions and living with the life that he's kind of created for himself, and he's not listening to this naysayer. A lot of times when you take advice from other people, and I personally don't even a lot like doing that, because you're taking it from the mindset and the myopic experience that person has to like deal with, right? So you got to be very, very cognizant of who you're listening to and if you should be listening to them as opposed to just listening to your gut.
Yeah, I agree. Was there a time in your life when you were when you struggled to stay in line, to stay in the box?
Always.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like you were a troublemaker when you were a kid.
I wasn't. Well, depends on who you ask, right? I mean, I wasn't a troublemaker, but I was extremely curious. And I think that's like the secret. That's like the superpower, right? It could be a blessing and a curse, right? I ask a ton of questions and I'm very curious. And so therefore I can get myself into trouble sometimes. But for the most part, it works out at the end, right? Don't you think that, maybe you don't, it's my belief that curiosity is the pathway for connection and communication.
Absolutely.
And right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that gene to be curious, that's where all the opportunities come. I believe that you have to practice in that as well. So if your baseline is like not to be very interested and just to kind of be in your own little space, you don't learn anything. There's nothing there.
Yeah. Well, it's like a dead life, you know, It's just like it's living life in black and white. And there's like this whole spectrum of colors that comes alive only when your mind is open to it, to seeing those different colors. And I think curiosity is like the first step, the first, it's the necessary but not sufficient step to seeing the full rainbow, so to speak.
Well, I just think that like when you're like, if I wasn't curious, right, and asked you a million questions, right, in a real way, like I'm not talking about like in a very disingenuous way, right? You and I, me and you, we would never have developed a friendship.
Yeah.
Like, right. I would never have been able to try to set you up with 100 people. You know?
Well, you're like the perfect podcaster. I mean, you've you're like, you found the right niche for yourself for sure.
Because it comes from a natural place of curiosity, right? Like I want to know every little nuance about your life. Like the nitty gritty. I don't really care about the surface superfluous things. I really care about I want to know what you're eating, how you're eating it, what you're doing and why you're doing it. Like every habit, every little nook and cranny of like what makes you tick.
Are you like that with all of your friends?
Everybody. I mean,
everybody.
Yes.
Interesting.
I am.
And it's interesting that you have the mental bandwidth to receive all of that information because you also have kids and a married life, right? Like,
yes, I have a married life too, and I have kids. Yes, that's true. But your bandwidth is for what you're interested in, right? If I wasn't interested, it would very much it would just basically evaporate. I wouldn't have it. But it's because I'm actually interested.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, there's some things I'm not interested in, but people I'm interested in because I feel that's how you learn. Like a lot of like my best productivity tips and my best life hacks come from like asking a shit ton of questions.
Were you always interested in people?
Mm-hmm.
So that was like something that you were always interested in?
Always. Are you not?
I am. No, I am. I think I have, I think we tend to have like the things that we're interested in, right? And my brain is very much like a light switch. Like I'm passionately curious about what I'm interested in, but like the things that I'm not interested in, you couldn't pay me to like sit down and focus.
True.
You know, it's one of the reasons why I didn't do very well in school because I would get A's in the classes that I was interested in, but the majority of classes I wasn't interested in. And then I would just get D's in those classes. Were you a good student?
Terrible student because I'm very similar to you actually. If I'm interested, I lean really hard into that and I can be, and I want to know everything. I'm super extreme in that way. But if I'm not interested in math, for example. So I couldn't wrap my head around it. I mean, I was very good at what I was, similar to you, actually. I was very good at what I was good at, but I was much more interested in stuff outside of school. right? Like it wasn't that I was a terrible, terrible student, I should say, but I wasn't fantastic. I was like average at best, maybe. I would not, and like there's some things I was even like worse at. But like the reality is, I mean, I found what I did enjoy and I went super hard into that. And then I kind of just built on those strengths. That's what I did.
What did you study in school?
For college, so I actually have a psychology degree, and then I also have an MBA, and it's in sports marketing. So I'm actually overschooled for someone who hates school, but that's more from my Jewish background than anything else, right? Because it's part of my like culture to be educated. So that's what I did, not because I liked it, but I felt like it was something that was what. If you asked me earlier about like things, if I got myself in trouble or like things I had to do because it was like was kind of told of me, that would be one of them.
It was pretty important for my parents that I went to college, but beyond that, they didn't seem to pressure me into like any particular career path, which I'm super grateful for.
Yeah, no, me too, actually. But my mother would always say to me that you have to have something to fall back on.
Yeah.
Right. Because I was always much more of, I was always driven, but not knowing, like I always had a direction, but not a destination. Right. Like I kind of like knew the area kind of I wanted to kind of go into, but never like, I was kind of like swimming in a lane, but not really sure where I was going to end up.
Were you similar to me in the sense that like your grades were never that great, but despite that, the teachers always really liked you?
Yes.
Yeah. Same.
You too?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's curiosity.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think that's like the telltale sign. It's like teachers really, they saw potential in you. They saw your curiosity. They saw that you had an open mind.
Yeah.
But you procrastinated when the time came to study for a test.
Totally. I'm so surprised to hear this of you because to me, you seem like you would be like a genius. Like you'd be a great, because you're very, like very articulate. You understand complex things and you can kind of drill them down to a very layman's term, which is a sign of someone who's very
intelligent.
Who has very yes.
No,
yes,
I think
who's very intelligent. Yes.
I think that I am intelligent, but I just I'm unable to focus on the things that I'm not, and unwilling to I think ultimately focus on the things that I'm not passionate about. This has always been my case. I've just been stubbornly obsessive about the things that I care about, which is not that many things. You know, it's like music, film, health, creativity to some degree, you know, within certain, you know, specific mediums, but that's generally it. But with those topics that I'm interested in, there's no ceiling to the reach that I'll go, the length that I'll go to understand the topic. Whatever that happens to be.
Did you like health? Were you interested in health when you were younger, or was it because of your mom and Alzheimer's that it started to kind of put you down that path? Now you're on my podcast.
Yeah. No, I was, for as long as I can remember, I've been interested in health. Once I really started to, my passions started to like galvanize, I became self-aware of the things that I was interested in. Mm-hmm. Health was always one of those things. Like from a very young age, it was fitness primarily. It was nutrition. It was supplementation. I started college with the intent of becoming a doctor, but I didn't know like what area of medicine I wanted to go in. And I realized early enough on that my academic history wasn't gonna bode well for like an academic medical career. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like an unfortunate like realization that I made. But it was also around the time that I made that realization, I in tandem realized that I was creative and that I was a storyteller, and so I wasn't like bummed about it or anything like that.
Right,
I was like, oh wow, I discovered this whole new side of myself, and so I just went in that direction instead.
Like, I bet you would never think in a million years when you were 18 that you would have the podcast and the whole Genius Life books and the whole thing. Never.
No. I mean, I know that looking back, I really did enjoy being behind and in front of cameras when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's not. When I look back, I don't see like myself on video and say, "Oh, that's the beginning of a great communicator." Like there wasn't really. It all kind of came together in a really circuitous, but nonetheless serendipitous way. And yeah, no, I never would have predicted that I'd be doing what I'm doing.
Right. But you had you had a direction, like you really were interested in the brain and everything else, and then the job with Current TV, right? That's what you were doing. You were doing like, what would you do? You were
I was a
host?
producer and I was a host for the network. Yeah. So they saw something early on, this TV network that I worked for early on that, ended up being like the beginning of my career, and would ultimately, I would learn a lot that I would then put towards what I'm currently doing. But yeah, it's sort of like, I don't know. It's like this, like I had this like latent talent combined with this burning passion to understand all that I could, motivated primarily by my mom, but also I had this interest, you know? And yeah, so it all just sort of like came about, in a really serendipitous way.
Well, it's having transferable skills, right? Like you also are taking skills that you had from the Current TV, right? And like that was a dot that you had, and it's like kind of connecting the dots, right? And then in careers and in life, right? If you're doing things that you are interested in and have passion for, you may not be it may not be the ideal thing at that moment. Is that my thing? Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, and also it's like I think the timing, there is a degree of luck. Perhaps like the timing was such that like podcasts were kind of like becoming a thing. And there was, within the book industry, somebody like me, there was the potential for somebody like me to get a book deal, which led to Genius Foods, obviously.
Well, how did you get the book? Again, not to be interviewing you, but how did you even get the book deal? Because you're right. I mean, now, by the way, it's so hard. It's even harder now to get a book deal, right? Like you have to have like a platform. It's like all these things that people don't really know what goes on behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
But when you did it, what did you have to pitch to even get the book deal?
I didn't have like a social media following to speak of really, but I was at the time doing a lot of the Dr. Oz show. I was talking about nutrition.
Oh, you were doing that already?
Yeah, I was doing that already. And I was, I had a good story and I was a good communicator. And they thought the publisher, Karen Rinaldi, thought that I was a good champion for this topic that nobody was talking about. Like when people now on social media talk about nutrition and brain health, but when I first got started, I was the only person.
Really?
Yeah, I was like the only. Maybe Mark Hyman, David Perlmutter, they were certainly talking about the role of nutrition and brain health, but it was not something that anybody was talking about on social media. It was not something that was considered of general public interest. Because when my mom got sick, I sought the advice and counsel and whatever I could find online, and there just wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot. Like there was like an older book by Mark Hyman that he had put out called Ultramind Solution or something like that. And then David Perlmutter probably just around that time put out Grain Brain, which was a phenomenal book at the time.
I remember that one.
And then, but there wasn't really much else. Like, there were, what health podcasts were there? There were none.
There was none.
I mean, there was like Rogan, right? Joe Rogan was like doing his thing and had a bunch of like, would occasionally have
health people
on, but
it wasn't a thing back then. You're right. And also you just named people that were older. So in this like new generation or the younger generation, there was really no face for it at all.
None.
And so you were that cute face that was able to kind of come in and do it. And now, don't you feel it's become like so saturated? And so to me, it's like there's so many people talking about it where it becomes overwhelming and you don't know who to listen to because there's so many contradictory opinions.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with social media, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're following someone who has their information is not accurate, then you're screwed.
Yeah. I make a point to not pay too much attention to what anybody else is saying on social media.
That's good.
Like whether they're doctors, even people that I respect and look up to, I try to keep my eye on sort of my own work, on my own paper, on the research that I'm uncovering. And yeah, I mean, occasionally different perspectives. I do make an attempt to seek out different perspectives, but I try not to spend too much time thinking, because there's it's always like the game of telephone. Even well-respected people in our space are guilty of over extrapolating from the data or misinterpreting the data.
Totally.
And it's just like it's a big problem. So my intent is never to come off as like a parrot, you know, and to just like
Yeah.
be echoing what other people are saying out there, you know, like that's just the way in my own life that I, you know, institute a degree of like checks and balances.
I just find that, and also what happens so much is that if someone doesn't agree with what you're talking about, not just you, anybody, that people just like, they're like vultures out there. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, it's unbelievable. It's not even okay to have an opinion if they don't, if it doesn't agree with the other person's opinion.
Yeah.
Like this whole fight between protein, animal protein and vegan, it's like so crazy. Like people will literally like hate you
Yeah.
if you eat a piece of chicken.
It's such a problem. I mean, yeah, the diet tribes.
It's crazy what's happened. It was never like that before.
No, it's nuts. You just can't pay any attention. You really have to like post and ghost. And I'm terrible at that, but I'm trying to get better. But it is
Post and ghost. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a problem.
But you like leaned, I think, in more to the whole protein side of things, animal protein.
Because I think it's important, not because I like controversy or because I like the vegan lunatics coming over to my page and leaving, you know, troll comments, but I think it's important, especially for women. Prior to my going on Rogan, like I think that now my audience is like,
now you're big time.
It's pretty well, no, it's balanced. I was going to say in terms of like gender, but prior to that, it was, you know, I think it skewed a little bit more female, and I think that that's a cohort for whom which like this messaging surrounding like, you know, plant-based diets and how unhealthy animal protein is because of the appeal to emotion that's often used.
Totally. Yeah.
They're particularly vulnerable. And I think that like women, especially premenopausal women, are the ones who can probably derive the most benefit from eating a little bit more animal protein and like red meat, you know, heme iron.
I mean, listen,
it's a big problem.
I think I'm a big believer in that. I mean, I'm a big protein person myself. And when I don't eat enough protein, number one, especially as you age, as you get older, the lean muscle mass. I mean, it's really, really hard to find true protein sources if it's not going to be animal.
Yeah.
I don't know how, I mean, I hate to say it, I'm going to get screamed at for this, but like I've tried the days that, let's say I didn't have access to that for whatever reason, for a week, or I was trying something different for a couple of weeks. I actually felt like not only did my body composition actually change, but my energy levels did change. And like, you just become softer, just in a vanity way.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to be honest, right? And I guess everyone's bodies are different, but I think it's also just, do you look at people who are vegan? I mean, they don't look the healthiest. I hate to say it.
I mean, there are definitely some, but it's because they're career vegans, and because they make it, they're very good at like planning, you know, if anybody's going to be able to like execute a well-planned vegan diet, it's them. It's people who like have built these identities around their diets, right?
True. That's the thing.
Yeah. If you're vegan and you're eating and you're consuming protein shakes regularly and you're really like going out of your way to prioritize protein, then yeah, you can make it work, but it's not easy nor practical, I think, for the average person.
No, that's the thing. I think you just said it perfectly, the career vegan, because it's so true. If there's so much extra effort and work that goes into being a proper vegan to get your proper like nutrients, right? Like the people I know who do it well, that is their entire life.
Yeah.
Literally. Like they're like preparing food all day because that's what you have to do. And like, I'm going to get again yelled at, but it's the truth. Because otherwise, a lot of people, what they do, they eat heavy carbs and they're eating tons of breads and grains, and because there's no balance. Because the people that I know who do vegan well, they're like trained chefs practically.
Yeah.
Like the cashew butter and this, and they add this fat and that. And I find it to be like a super difficult way to manage your life if you're a busy person. Now that's me. So no one yell at me. I'm just giving you my opinion, okay? But
well, not only that, but you see sometimes on social media people who seem like they're thriving on plant-based diets.
Yeah.
But this is where like the problem with anecdote comes in, is like, yeah, they're thriving, but could they potentially do better were they to add a couple eggs, you know, on a weekly basis to their diet, or have the occasional steak? It's like you always have to ask the question, like, compared to what? Are they thriving compared to them and their identical diet plus, you know, a dozen eggs a week, plus the occasional ribeye or lean, you know, piece of beef tenderloin? So yeah, I just don't think.
True.
Yeah, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. But people adopt like, you know, plant-based diets for a whole host of reasons, ethical reasons, and you know, some people. I think the best argument is that they just don't want to consume animals. Like they don't want to consume animal products. Like that just like either grosses them out or from an ethical standpoint, it leads to like too much cognitive dissonance. I think those are all totally reasonable.
Those are definitely reasonable
explanations.
And there are people who say that they were carnivores and then they went the other direction, and it's like actually helped them with energy and helped them with this. I mean, everyone's different, but I think I'm talking about the majority of people.
Yeah. No,
that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think it's suboptimal for the majority of people. There have been a few studies that I've seen recently where it's like omnivores compared to vegans and vegetarians, they have more muscle mass. They tend to consume more protein. It's just like, it's a fact. Like in the free living environment, like omnivores tend to consume more protein.
Yep. I totally agree. I mean, listen, it's my lifestyle. Like, so I'm a bad person to talk to about that because I'm in your lane in that way. But one of my best friends, he's a big vegan, and and he thinks having nuts all day and acai bowls are the way to go. So,
look, I don't think so, but I don't know everything. I could be wrong. That's the thing.
Could be.
Like maybe they're right. I don't know. I'm just trying to project what I believe to be true based on my research. And there's a lot of people like me with different opinions out there. I think that I'm the best at what I do.
You should.
Yeah, I do. And I think what my audience perceives from me, which is accurate, is that I'm very honest about where I'm coming from, and I also practice what I preach. So yeah. How
about your fitness regimen though?
This is supposed to be an interview about you.
Well, you're not asking good questions. What can I tell you? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
My fitness regimen is working for me. It's great. I lift weights 4 or 5 days a week. Works for me.
Yeah.
Can't you tell?
Yeah, you're really svelte, actually. Ladies, I'm telling you, you're missing out over here. If you're just listening to the podcast, you should show the video.
Bigger, better, bolder. Okay, so the book. Do you have like a...
He should have read the book, really. He didn't read the book. This is why it's a struggle for him, guys.
You sent it to me 2 days ago, but I love the book. You have a plan in the back of the book.
Yeah, let me, yes. But it's not even just about the plan. It's really about the message of what I was saying earlier, right? Which is about not just accepting what's at face value in front of you, right? So do you want me to ask my own questions? Would that be better for you?
Just tell me about the book.
Okay. So let me give you how this whole thing kind of, I told you about the TED Talk, of course, but.
How many views you got on that thing?
I don't know, like 5 or 6 million so far. Yeah, a lot so far. I mean, listen, it's not like a Simon Sinek one, which is like 80 million, but I mean, for this, it's a big one. I think what happens a lot of times, and this is why I think it kind of resonated, was that we as we get in our own way the most, right? And I think that self-doubt is what kind of stops. Are you smiling at me for a reason?
I just enjoy talking to you.
Okay. Okay, good. You're probably just laughing at the fact that I'm making fun of you on your podcast.
It's okay.
Okay.
I like it. It's fine.
Good. So let me just say, so basically, I think why it resonated was that the self-doubt aspect, right? People get really stuck in their own way and they can't get out of their own way. And then the self-doubt is, it kind of just becomes like a perpetual thing. So the idea is really not how to kind of get comfortable with allowing yourself to fail and getting good at it, to be resilient, to keep on going and trying over and over again. I don't know. Last year, actually, I did this talk at MIT, which of course is with the smartest people in the world on the planet were there. And it was based and the whole talk was based around, they wanted me to talk about failure and resilience. And I thought that was really interesting because here you are talking to people who are the smartest people on the planet, right? And I'm like, what do they need to hear this for? And the truth of the matter is, it's because if people don't get used to or comfortable with the failure part, the fall is so hard on the way down. So the suicide rate is really, really high there, and at Harvard and at schools like this. So it's how to teach people at an early age or like early on to try and get comfortable with that feeling, because it makes it much easier to kind of keep on going. Now, and why I talk about this is that, why I'm saying this is that it's sometimes easier when you're kind of mediocre and average to actually succeed in life, right? Because you've had so much more comfort in like the failing aspect. So in real life, when you try for something and it doesn't work out for you, you're more likely to get up and dust yourself off and try again. So I wanted to kind of give people that hope, right? That like not you don't have to be the most talented and the smartest and the prettiest to have the life that you really want. You just have to kind of go after it and try and uh, and make attempts at it. So
I love that. I think that it's true that people tend to gravitate towards and appreciate most the things that are average anyway.
yeah,
It's like if you look at hit songs or box office smash success movies, they're not so unique as to be completely unfamiliar to their audiences, right? They always have qualities that are reminiscent of the movies that have come before them, or
totally.
and a song that's a hit song, like a pop song, has qualities of it that are like, oh, I feel like I've heard this melody before. Like they all have aspects of that, like familiarity.
True.
You know?
How is that the same as self-doubt though, Max?
Well, because people, I think, that feel average tend to think of that quality of averageness as being subpar or suboptimal or less desirable than having like some sort of, outlier
Well, you know what I find
characteristic,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that it's interesting because like 75% of the people in the world are basically average, right? Or below, right? There's only maybe like 2% is or 5% are not, right? But I don't know about you, but the people that I grew up with, the ones that were were thought to be who were world changers, game changers, like the smartest, like the most academically smart people and like most talented. If you look at them 25 years later, they're kind of not necessarily living the optimum life. In fact, the people I went to school with who were brilliant and they were smart and they were talented, they kind of didn't really do much with their life. But it was the people who had to learn, who were struggling, who had to teach, who had to learn how to be resourceful. So I think with me, because I was a struggling student, I had to learn how to be resourceful and like figure shit out, like to get by. And to me, that's like why a lot of people like in real life, like down the road, become true huge successes is because they had to figure out that shit because it wasn't coming to them very easily.
Interesting.
So that resourcefulness is a major piece of it. Like, and I think they're all very connected, right? Like the resourcefulness, the curiosity, because you have to ask a lot of questions, right? To be resourceful, to kind of get information and to learn from that. And then you kind of like get to the next thing. And so to me, I think it's actually a blessing when you're average as a young person, because
I agree. I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Like mediocrity to me it's been like a game changer for me.
Well, I probably, yeah. I mean, I feel like when I was a kid, I probably felt very average. Like I didn't, when I was a kid, I didn't have any like I probably felt, if you would have asked me, that I had no discernible talents or skills or abilities like when I was a kid. Right. But I guess that experience, like going through childhood like that, makes you a bit scrappy, makes you scrappier than those that like early on feel as though they've got it all.
And also, what does it mean to have it all, right? Like this idea, just because you're a good student, so then what, right? Doesn't mean anything, right? I think it means if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? But what if you don't?
Most successful entrepreneurs probably were like the C/D students.
They
like,
were.
Like I am.
Like me.
Like I was, yeah.
Yeah, like me too.
What's that saying? Like the A students end up working for the C students?
That is actually true.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the saying exactly, but I do believe that to be true. Because again, like we were saying, grit, scrappiness, resourcefulness is cultivated in those times, right? Because you have to figure shit out and things are not just like expected to be, or it doesn't come easy to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that this quality of resourcefulness is a teachable skill for somebody who's in adulthood? I
think boldness is a teachable skill. I think that they're all go hand in hand. I think that you can get I think anything is teachable if you have the desire and want to change it. I even think your personality is, you can, everyone has a baseline. Let's not be, I think everyone has a baseline, but I think that everything you can get better at anything with practice and desire to get better at it. With, and there's been like, again, a ton of research backing this. It's not just my opinion at this point. It's actually the truth. And it's not something like going to the gym. You can't just go to the gym one time and expect to like be strong and fit, right? It's something you got to practice something very consistently, not intensely necessarily, but consistently over and over and over again. And things do change. So yeah, I think that if you need to be resourceful, I don't think that maybe resourcefulness is necessarily something that you can necessarily teach, but you can do little, you can, what I do in the book is I give people small, bold moves to do every day to increase and to make them more bold. Because how can you ask for a big thing in life if you're not comfortable asking for a small thing? So like when you go to a restaurant, right? And even to something so silly and stupid as this, there are people who are uncomfortable if their food comes out and it's undercooked or if it's cold. They'll just take it and eat it.
The worst. Oh my God.
Because they don't want to make waves, They don't want to be rude. They don't want to create any kind of uncomfortable discomfort. So they'll just like take what they have in front of them. So I'm like, next time that happens, you have to send it back. Or like, why not ask for the sauce on the side or the extra vegetables or the extra salad? Like these stupid little things that seem so trite and small actually create a huge change in life, right? Like these little things, if you can ask for that, or like calling up Verizon or your whatever cellular provider and being like, hey, what other plans do you have for me? Like I'm paying too much money. I'm paying $200 a month and there must be a newer plan that I can get on. 9 out of 10 times, they will find a way for you to maybe save even like $20 a month.
Yeah. Because they don't want to lose you as a customer.
They don't want to leave you. Yeah. And if you just like even say, I'm going to go to AT&T if you don't change this, I'm just making it up. There's always a way around that. Like I have a friend actually, when I was like doing this, after my TED talk, and someone said to me, I'm going to try this thing. And they did it for like 8 months. Wherever they went, they would ask for 10% off, no matter where they went, a restaurant, a store, where they're like, is there any extra discount? Any kind of extra, whatever, appreciation day, local day. 8 out of 10 times the person, like they saved so much money.
Wow.
They went to the coffee place and they got like a local coffee. I didn't really even have this available in Venice.
Like that works if you're a girl, but if you're a guy, that could just...
It was a guy who did it.
It was a guy?
Yes. It was a guy who did it. I knew you were going to say that.
But doesn't that, that just makes him sound cheap.
True, but like maybe he wasn't doing it necessarily in front of the girl, but he was doing it as an experiment, right? About getting comfortable with the ask.
Yeah.
Right? That's the problem. People aren't comfortable with the ask. They feel uncomfortable asking for whatever it is that they want. So if you can get comfortable in the ask for like small, stupid things, when there's a big thing that you really want, you'll be much more comfortable to ask for it.
Do you know that
that's the point?
That Jewish term schnorr?
Oh, schnorr, yes.
What is that for the audience?
I love that you even said that.
For people that don't know.
A schnorr is different. Okay. A schnorr in like, that's like it means kind of like to like constantly try to get something from someone, like constantly get something from someone. You
never want to be a schnorr.
You don't want to be a schnorr, but it's different. If they have it, it's about a reshift and reframing how you see and perceive things, right? Because it's all perception. I'm not seeing it as being I don't see it as that. I think a schnorr would be like, how do I get every little thing out of you? That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like asking the question, like very casually, like, hey, is there like some kind of like, is there some type of discount or is there some kind of deal today?
Yeah, I like that.
What kind of deal do you have? Or what kind of deal do you have today? And like I said, like the guy, not the girl, saved a lot of money. It's not about what you say, it's how you say it, right? Like I don't get offended. You can say Max or anybody you can say anything you want to me. But if it's done in a nice way, that's like kind of not like a dick or an asshole, I'll be fine with it, right? It's like learning. It's like learning how to kind of speak to people where they're not going to be, they won't be taken aback.
Yeah.
right? And not being rude. If you're rude, of course not.
Right.
I want you tomorrow to start just for one day, go around everywhere you go, Arrow One, because that's where you hang out, and see if and that's a place where you need a discount. See if there's any kind of like deals that they can offer you.
Erewhon, I mean, I could already tell you the answer. They're not.
That's a no.
They're not offering anything. But
No.
no, it's like you can ask like a waiter for something in a way that is very pleasant and respectful, or you could ask the same question in a way that's very rude and off-putting.
100%.
I have a friend who, like, whenever he's talking to a waiter, I'm with him and I see it. And it's always embarrassing to me, but he doesn't really raise his voice, so it causes the waiter to have to like lean in. And he never says like please or thank you. Yeah,
terrible.
it's not like he's he's not being explicitly like rude or anything, but he's just like he's not a self-aware person. He's not like self-aware enough to know that like, okay, your volume should be like, you raise your volume a little bit and like speak to this person as if he's like a human being who's like doing you a service, you know?
So to me, that's I'm very uncomfortable with that. So it's 8, knowing your audience and like reading the room.
Yeah.
But also self-awareness. Key is self-awareness, right? Not knowing how you occur to the outside world is detrimental. So the first step from anything, it doesn't matter if it's my book or anything you're trying to learn, right? Or dealing with people to kind of optimize your life or get ahead in life, is to take a check of who you are and like how you occur and like what it is about you. Because that to me is like, that changes everything. That's like that little thing that's a big thing.
Mm. Yeah. What are some other daily steps to cultivate boldness? You said that
there's bold moves. So that's one of them. But like, I mean, it depends on what it is. But I will say this is where I'll some habits I think are non-negotiable. So let's go to fitness for a second, right? So I'm going to take it a step back, right? When I was younger and very average, when I ended up in the fitness business because of like a total accident. I was trying out for a dance thing that all my friends were doing. You know what? Actually, you're Jewish. Do you know what chai is?
No.
You don't?
I do not. Doesn't that mean like life or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's like this thing was called like the Chai Folk Ensemble. It was like a dance group. And all my friends were all like, trying out because it was like the thing, like what we
were you like religious growing up?
No, I wasn't religious.
Neither was
I wasn't religious, but it was something that like I went to a private Jewish school up until grade 10. I'm Canadian though. But anyway, I digress. And then everyone was trying out for this thing. And I was like the only one who didn't get into this dance troupe. And so it kind of made me like, what am I going to do while my friends are doing this dance, the rehearsals. So there was like a gym that opened up down the street from my house that was like for all women, like an all women's gym called Shapes. And I'm like, I'll try going to there. I'll do that maybe. I'll take an aerobic class. Do you remember aerobics?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did that and I got really into it. And I noticed how like my body was changing. I was getting much stronger. And so that kind of helped propel me to keep on going there. So I just ended up doing this thing over and over and over again. But as I got more physically strong, I developed my mental strength and my mental toughness, right? Because it became like, and my confidence was changing and I was becoming much more confident because I was holding myself different in the world. But more I learned like goal, and because I started so young, it taught me like goal setting and discipline and all these like things that, fitness was to me a microcosm for like the world that we live in. And so I'd say that, and I believe this to be very true, is that people who take fitness seriously to some extent that is, I think, a huge gateway to success in any area of your life because of what the fundamentals and foundation of what it teaches somebody. And I was just actually on Mind Pump we were talking all about this, is that it's not because, I don't think that just because people assume and they start to pigeonhole and compartmentalize that, well, if you are doing fitness and you're taking it seriously and then it's your business, then all you know how to do is a squat and a lunge, and a plank, right? But the reality is like the actual life lessons and the skills that you get and you harness from being in the fitness business actually is so much more. There's such more meat on the bone, so to speak. It takes you through life in a whole different way. So why I'm bringing this up to you is that I believe that if people start to take fitness seriously as a habit, and they see themselves changing, and they are like they can goal set and they can see progression, it will become it will change who they are in the inside. It will make them much more resilient. They'll make them much more able to, not to mention, I should tell you this because who am I talking to? It's not so much even, it's not just the physicality, it's about what it does for your brain, right? The cognitive aspects. You have much more energy from it. You have much more, energy begets energy. You become much more focused and alert and on point. Like clarity is a big part of it. So it took me through life with all of these skill sets that really helped harness my boldness, right? Because I came from a place of like more confidence, and I had these other tools in my toolkit, and I was able to kind of go and conquer that way. Does that make any sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah, I love it. Fitness, I mean, the fitness lifestyle to me is such a blessing.
Yeah,
to be able to have that. It's so true. It has like there's such a significant spillover effect that fitness has in so many other domains of life outside of the gym.
Yeah,
because fitness. What does fitness teach you? I mean, it teaches you. There are so many lessons. It teaches you about patience. It teaches you about persistence. It teaches you humility, right? Because like you get injured or you realize from like a friend who's smarter than you about fitness that like, oh, your form sucks, like
totally.
Patience, persistence, humility. It teaches you, there's so much. I mean, there's so much.
And also like the best way, people always talk in life about motivation, right? Like motivation. That's a big thing, a big hashtag.
Yeah.
And the best motivation for anybody, in my opinion, is when you win at something, right? When you see a win or you get a win, it gives you the motivation to try and win again or to keep on going, like that, to persevere, right? The perseverance is what it is. And that's what fitness is, right? Because if you see yourself, that's why if you do that and take it seriously and understand that little goal or whatever you're trying to do, and you've done it, even the accomplishment of actually doing the workout, and you've actually had that accomplishment, right? Like it's a win for the day. It will give you the perseverance to go conquer the next thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because you feel like you've achieved something. So one of the main habits and one of the big things not just in this book, I'm talking that how I cultivated the boldness was when I did that. Working out every single day is non-negotiable. I don't care if it doesn't have to be an intense workout, but it has to be something that you're doing, because it gets your, not just your blood, it gets your brain going.
I love that. Yeah.
Right? It gets your brain going. It makes me much more able to think and focus and go after something in a real way. And so that's why it is a habit that is, I think, just fundamental.
Yeah. It also teaches you about, I'm just trying to think of all the other lessons. Like it teaches you about failure.
Yeah.
It teaches you about, because some days you'll go and you won't be able to lift as much as you did the prior day. And you're like, what's going on there? It teaches you about the value of pain,
Yes.
like how pain, like whether it's like delayed onset muscle soreness or, it teaches you about, you go to the gym and you see people that are like in way better shape than you. So it teaches you like about, there's some things that you can't change in life, right? Like genes play a big part in this.
Genes play a big part.
So it's like self-acceptance.
Not always.
Not always. But
not always. Let's be honest. It's not really about self-acceptance. You're like, damn, why can't I look like that? And then you can beat yourself up about it. But I think even though, I think also just in general, like when you're older, like, and it's not like, you don't have to be like fanatical about it, right? But even just getting it done in the day as an accomplishment, like we were just saying, makes people want to motivate them to keep on going after it in life in other ways, right? Like I said, I think the fitness is a great analogy and some microcosm for like the world, right? You don't have to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You don't have to be like a Miss Fitness. It's just the fact that like when you incorporate it in a real way consistently, your mind changes, your brain changes, your body changes, your confidence changes, and you become bolder. That's like one way to become bolder right away.
Yeah. I feel like boldness also is in like your appearance and your not like your shape, your physicality, but like how you dress, how you present yourself, how you speak, like your vocal patterns, like your vocal assertiveness. Yeah, there's like a lot.
Well, I just think, yeah. And again, it's like, what do you want? Like, why is it so, why does something so simple have to be so complicated? If you just like, people are shocked if they just asked for what they actually wanted, how often they will actually get what they wanted.
Yeah.
And if they don't get what they want, because if it's the amount of time, like another opportunity will present itself that you didn't even know even existed by just getting in that pattern of a sheer ask.
Yeah. Who's your book? Who'd you write your book for? Is it like primarily men, women? Like, who do you think is like, what reader out there is like?
I think people who feel stuck and they feel that they're stuck. They don't know what to do, and they don't know how to get there. I think that's one. I think it's a lot of people who like it or like the talk, I should say, are people in college or people who are trying to figure out what to do next with their life, right? And or people who actually are in like a midlife crisis, right? Where they need to pivot one way or another, or overall people who just feel like they have doubt in who they are and what they don't think they're good enough. They don't think that they are smart enough or talented enough or pretty enough to go and actually go after what they really want. So like, that's why, like, I think it's really for anybody, a guy or a girl, young or old, who just never felt like they really went after the life that they truly wanted. They just kind of just, like I said, they acquiesced to what came in front of them. And so you can make a big shift by just picking one thing, and just trying to go after that. I call this thing the 10% target. And it's about picking one thing in life that you want most. It doesn't have to be, it's not about everything. Picking one thing and making 10 attempts at getting it. And go ahead.
Are there any examples in your life where you could have taken the easy path, but instead you chose to be bold? Like any like actual experience in your life that you've drawn from?
Yeah, well, I think that why I smile because like I feel like I never really had the easy path. feel like I had to learn I had to learn how to kind of be scrappy and go and kind of chase what I wanted. Nothing really ever was the easy path for me. And so that's why I was like a perfect person to write this book, because I had to really harness the boldness and harness the curiosity and the resourcefulness and go after it, because nothing was ever that easy. I never picked the easy path because it never was available to me.
Yeah. So after you got your MBA, like what was the plan?
And it was, that was hard as hell. I mean, that was actually me being very resourceful. I had to get people around me to help me with, I mean, it was like it was very difficult. I'm not going to lie. But no, what happened was I moved to Toronto. Like I said, I'm Canadian, and I got a job with the Toronto Raptors, and then I went back to school because that's a basketball team, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just making sure. You're staring at me. I wasn't sure. You're like looking at me. I wasn't sure if you knew what it was.
I knew that it was like a sports team.
Are you not a sports fan at all?
Not at all, no.
At all?
No, I don't follow sports at all. At all. I have like nerdy interests.
I really like that, actually.
Music, movies. Like I'm a huge fan of. I became recently. This is so nerdy. I can't believe I'm like sharing it, but I became a big fan of like the James Bond series.
I love that.
And like I bought like a bunch of Ian Fleming's books, and but in particular, it was the Daniel Craig era of James Bond that I just like. I think I wasn't feeling well one weekend or something, and I just decided to like binge watch all 5 of the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, and I just became like a huge fan. Like just like something clicked. But I'm like a
Really?
big movie fan. Like I was a huge fan of the Dark Knight series. Like
Yeah, I like that too.
I love like, I'm a cinemaphile. I studied film in college. Like I love movies. So,
Why the James Bond though? Like, why not Mission Impossible?
well, because he's a man who's imperfect. He is not necessarily tougher than his opponents, but he's more clever. He doesn't have any superpowers. He's highly adaptable. He says the right thing in social situations. He's actually he's my first like adult role model, actually. Like, I love like growing up, I loved superheroes. I love like musicians, like artists that I'm, of like my favorite bands and the like. But I think that there's something about him that's very aspirational. Even though he's kind of an anti-hero at times, and he has like these, obviously chauvinistic characteristics in his dealings with women, but like there's a lot to him that I think is like worth kind of studying.
I totally get why you, of all people, really like him now. And I know that, and you picked Daniel Craig. He's like your alter ego.
I think I don't know. I just
He
I
is.
kind of like gravitated to his like I think he's great in the role. I love the
No, you want to be him.
I don't know.
You see
it's
yourself
like,
in him.
I think that's what it is. I tend to, growing up, I would like the music that I would really like. There was always an aspect of like the voices of the singers that I really loved, where like I could almost like sing like them.
Yeah.
So there's like, I tend to like those who I see myself in, I tend to like to sink my teeth into. I don't know. But as you're talking about being bold, like I'm like, oh, that's kind of like a characteristic of like whether you're a male or a female. That is something that is like very Bond, like he was always unafraid, like his persistence and his cleverness and his fortitude is always what got him to the end of the movie. Right. And like made
fortitude
him,
for sure.
yeah. And made him the victor. It wasn't that he was always the toughest. James Bond isn't even like, there's this whole thing about James Bond that he wasn't even rich. He was paid like a government salary, but
That's
he was expense like wealthy, like everything that he bought.
Totally.
It was like, and he dressed the part well. He could fit into any social situation. He always has like the right thing to say.
It's so interesting that you just said that, and I'll tell you why. Because I had this whole part in my book about self-distancing. Have you heard of this self-distancing?
No.
Okay, and it's called the Batman effect, and it's about it's kind of like the alter ego is like the next level afterwards. But the whole idea behind self-distancing is like when you take yourself out of the perspective into a third person, that something like an action hero or like a James Bond, your ability to persevere at some at doing something goes up tenfold. So with kids, when they thought of themselves as like Batman or like a superhero or someone else, it allowed them to continue with that task and that act, whatever that thing was, for 100% more time.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so like when Beyonce, for example, when she even goes out on stage, she sees herself as Sasha Fierce, her alter ego, because that's how you can get yourself through very stressful or uncomfortable situations if you're someone who's not necessarily in that type of person. And I talk all about that in the book, which is really interesting why you said James Bond.
Yeah.
So when you go through some things in life that may be a little bit like not part of your personality, go after it, you can kind of envision and visualize that as you. Like,
well, I feel like I always kind of have, in a way. Like I've always loved superheroes. Like I've said this, like my interest in superheroes, like growing up as a kid, is probably what led to my passion for fitness. It's not that I was an athlete. It was that I had this like nerdy obsession with like superheroes.
I did too. Who was your favorite?
Well, I mean, I loved like the Marvel universe, so like X-Men and Wolverine and Spider-Man, all those guys. But I also really liked Batman a lot growing up.
Yeah, because he didn't have any powers either. He
didn't have any powers.
It out. Yeah.
Like I love the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight series with Christian Bale. I think it's just like the greatest. These are movies that I can like put on. I could watch a million times, because when I put it on, I'm not even necessarily putting it on to watch the movie, but to just immerse myself into that world.
Totally.
There's something very comforting to me about doing that.
I
Nobody is relating to this, I'm sure, but like
I know, but I am actually. I am. I love Iron Man now, but because I think Tony Stark's character is really great. But I find it very fascinating how you like all of these superheroes that are not with superpowers.
Yeah.
Or action heroes, I should say too. Like you like Batman and you like Spider-Man. I mean, Spider-Man has a little bit, but not.
Yeah. But no, I really connect with people that I kind of like see. It's like 50% I see myself in, and then the other 50% is like, I aspire to be more like that,
How do you want to be like, how do you see yourself in Batman?
Well, again, I think it's like his ingenuity, his fortitude, his courage, the fact that like Batman is not fearless. Batman has fear, but he does, he does it anyway. And that's the whole thing about courage. And so,
exactly.
And actually like when I, like thinking more about like, just introspecting and like, why do I like James Bond so much? Like, well, what is this about me? Like, I think that like it, I like the characteristic that he obviously exhibits of being like hard to kill. And it's not that he's hard to kill because he wears bulletproof vests or that he's like, bulletproof or anything like that. But like if I like that as a symbol. I like how he portrays like resilience and robustness and vigor, he's also not super young. Like he's in like middle age, by his last movie, he's like in his 50s or something like that,
Yeah.
And so like it poses an interesting question. Like shouldn't we all be more difficult to kill? Like shouldn't we all be striving towards being hard to kill? It's just something that like, I like that concept, and I've started thinking about my like training differently. Like I used to, going back to like the concept that you're talking about in your book, like I really dislike cardio.
Yeah.
But if you can't run a mile comfortably, like that's not good. Like you should be able to like you should be able to run away from somebody, or run potentially after somebody, but most of the time run away. You're going to be running away,
Yes, exactly. Well, it's also about doing things that are uncomfortable, right? Mm-hmm. Do you know about limbic friction? I'm sure, right?
Oh, the other thing is that he's got this ideal that's like larger than himself. For me, it's like the health of like my listeners and like, helping friends and loved ones not go through what it is in my mind. For him, it's for Queen and Country.
Yes.
So there's always something like
he's
larger.
doing it for a bigger, larger than himself, a reason bigger than himself.
Yeah. Sorry, what you asked something before.
I was going to say something about limbic friction. Do you know what that is?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay. It's about how to get comfortable doing the hard things, because doing hard things is very important. And it's when you do things before, so you do the hard things first, so then it makes things much more comfortable to do the other things later on in life. So that's why the whole thing is behind in the morning when you put hard things in the morning to get done and you accomplish them, it gives you much more of the ability to kind of get the other stuff done. And it's like you're stacking things before that to get it happen. I thought you would know about it.
No, that's interesting though. That's why I think a lot of people like do like cold showers in the morning.
Yeah, don't you?
My house, the water, I mean, I live in LA, but in general, like my shower doesn't get cold. It's kind of annoying.
By the way, neither does mine. I live here too. I thought it was just my house.
No, it's there's actually no cold on my shower. It's like only warm or hot. It's very weird.
No, it's me too.
And I don't own my house, so it's like I rent. So it's like, yeah.
Uh-oh.
But in general, it's like it's hard to get cold water in California. So no, I don't do that every morning.
Don't you have a cold plunge in your backyard?
No.
I'm joking, by the way, because I feel like that's so LA, by the way.
So LA.
Everyone has one.
I used to have access to a cold plunge and sauna that I would go to regularly, but I kind of lost access to that.
Why?
Unfortunately. It was just a place that I was like a member at for a year. They were doing these like annual memberships, and then they killed the memberships. They just like killed the memberships. Like you can't be a member. Or they like, what they did was they like made the price go through the roof or something. It was like just like crazy.
Where was that? I guess you don't want to tell me.
It was a place, and I don't want to give them the promotion.
But
F them.
Yeah, F them. But you can come to my house because I have a sauna.
Cool.
A red light
Down.
sauna. You can come over anytime. And I have a gym we can work out in. And it'll
Love
be
it.
free. I won't charge you.
You won't charge me?
No, I won't.
I go to like Equinox. I have like a bunch of like locations that I can use. And they've got like steam rooms and stuff. I don't like steam room as much as I think steam rooms are probably been beneficial. Um, in many ways comparable to saunas, probably, but no, I prefer like actual Finnish sauna. And I don't currently have one of those. Kind of a bummer.
Well, the thing is, so you don't. Like, I don't either. I have like a clear light, red light
Those are
sauna.
cool. I'm pro infrared.
But now there's all this stuff about how the sauna has to be even more hot than that sauna. Have you heard all this stuff?
Well, traditional sauna is supposed to be hot. It's supposed to be like, 180 to 200
Right.
degrees, something like that.
And this one only goes up to 170.
Yeah. It's funny. There's like an association. I think it's called the International Sauna Association.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that has
Wow.
that has lobbied to prohibit infrared sauna makers from calling their saunas, because they argue that it's not technically a sauna. A sauna, that's like a Finnish word,
Yeah.
right? Has a definition, and that
Wow.
definition is being like bastardized by infrared saunas that don't actually get that hot, right? They use different technology to heat the core of the body and whatever.
Right.
But
That's interesting. What do you think is more effective? I mean, this is the problem, right? This is what I was saying earlier. Like, again, there's so much contradictory information. Then you talk to some people and say, oh, as long as the core of your body is hot, that's why the red light is good, because it doesn't have to get so hot to get the effects. And then you talk to other people and they're like, no, it has to get up to 180 degrees
yeah,
to get that. I mean, I'm so confused. And so I'm like, what, did I buy this sauna? And like, maybe I'm not getting the effects of the sauna now? Or like, you know what I mean? It just constantly is ever changing.
it's just that nobody knows. It's like
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Nobody knows.
all the good like observational like outcome based research on saunas happens in Finland. And because in Finland, like if you were to study all the people
Yeah.
that have access to infrared saunas here, you'd probably see that infrared sauna use is associated with like really good health. But in the US, you've got to be pretty wealthy or connected or whatever to have an infrared sauna relative to the average person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's probably a hefty dose of healthy user bias confounding, those observations.
Yeah, it's true.
But in Finland, taking a sauna is like taking a shower. So you get a lot less of that, the influence of that healthy user bias in Finland. And so a lot of the research on, for example, sauna use and like dementia, stroke, hypertension, all that stuff comes out of Finland. And they use the traditional hot sauna. So you can't necessarily say that infrared sauna is associated with like reduced dementia, but we know that like hot Finnish is, right? You can't extrapolate it to the infrared. But I think that insofar as infrared still gets you to sweat pretty profusely, I think that's beneficial. I think there's like tremendous benefit in just sweating.
It is, but that was interesting. So in all your research with Alzheimer's, and there was nothing saying that the red light sauna can be effective for that, though. It was from the other the sauna.
Yeah,
from,
yeah.
That's
Right.
interesting.
You can't say that infrared use is associated with like reduced dementia risk, reduced hypertension. But that's not to say that they aren't. They may be. It's just that research hasn't been done.
That's
so we
really
don't know.
interesting.
But it's still like I think it's still beneficial. I mean, even taking a hot bath, you're still applying warmth to the body. You're still upregulating like nitric oxide production. Like you're still doing all these like wonderful things. So
Right.
it's just like there's all of this like heterogeneity, like that you've got all these different modalities, but there's definitely like overlapping aspects of like whether it's a hot bath or a hot shower or sitting in a steam room or sitting in a hot tub or sitting in an infrared sauna. There probably are similar benefits that you're getting from all of them. It's just that nobody's like studied and put all that together,
So the steam room versus the sauna, is there a big difference? Have there been research based on the difference that is there any benefit from the steam room for Alzheimer's?
Not that I'm there may be, but I don't think that there's any like data on it, because also steam room is like, again, probably in this country associated with gym memberships,
True.
and gym memberships are likely associated with like
A higher socioeconomic, yeah.
and higher tendency to exercise and less likelihood of smoking. So it's like, it's very hard research to do,
Yeah, that's true. I went to get a full body scan. Have you ever had one of those?
No, like MRI or
No, like a full body, not an MRI, a full body scan. It's like a no rad, like no radiation. And it checks for all sorts of different, like for cancers, for like a lot of like brain things. And but based on I wanted to ask you about this. Based on what they saw in my brain, they can tell that I'm not a candidate for Alzheimer's. Have you heard of this before? Like to go and get that? You should go research those things.
No. Have you done a gene test? Like to
No.
look at like whether or not you carry the ApoE4
No.
allele?
Have you done that test? I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
And?
I'm at risk. Yeah. I mean, my mom had dementia and I carry a copy of the ApoE4 allele. So I'm at, double the risk of somebody who doesn't carry that copy, doesn't carry that allele. Because you inherit one copy from each of your parents of like, whether it's the ApoE2, 3, or 4. 2 is thought to be protective, 3 is neutral, 4 puts you at higher risk. And so most people are going to be 3-3, but 1 in 4 people carry at least one copy of the ApoE4, which puts you at higher risk. So, but it's not a deterministic gene. So it's just like higher risk in the context of the standard American diet. But there are things that you can do to negate that risk, like exercise, for example, or eating a healthy diet. So I'm not concerned about it.
That's interesting because the guy, the radiologist said that based on how it looked, is you have a baseline, and if you're 1 grade, he can tell by where I guess how the scan is. If you're one below, you are more of a candidate versus 1 grade above.
I wonder what he looked at. I don't know.
I'll get that information for you.
Chris Hemsworth, though, he's got 2 copies of the ApoE4.
I saw that.
allele, which is like,
That's Peter Attia did that, right, with him?
I don't know.
Oh.
But I
saw that. So what is that? If he's got 2, that's
well, again,
really
it's not a deterministic gene, but yeah, in the context of the standard American diet and lifestyle, yeah, he's at pretty high risk. So I mean, but he's also in great shape, obviously. So he's doing a lot right. Like there's nothing like, I don't know what his diet looks like, obviously, but like he's clearly in good shape. He's clearly, he's a fit person based on like, some of the clips that I've seen from his show. Like he's definitely like
crazy fit. What are you talking about?
Yeah, he's in good cardiovascular.
He's a superhero.
He's a superhero. So yeah, I'm not too worried about him.
I'm not really too worried, but do you think do you think that nutrition, if you're just, why is my phone, do you see me? Why does this happen? This happens all the time, by the way. This is not just over here. I shut my phone off.
It's like you and my dad don't know how to put your phone on silent.
Why? Were you at the mind pump when that happened? I probably did happen.
Do you know how to put your phone on silent?
No, I do. I click this thing. I just have to shut it off. I click this button and it still rings. Maybe me and your dad. Maybe it's true. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe you can give me a tutorial afterwards.
I don't know.
Is that going to ruin your show?
Boomer move.
I don't know exactly. Do you think that I have to? Is that going to ruin the show now that I had that ring?
It's not going to ruin the show.
Okay, I don't want to Well, if I did, I'm sorry, listeners, if you had to listen to my phone.
Well, I'm super excited about Bigger, Better, Bolder. I think it's a wonderful book based on. I haven't read a ton of it because you sent me it 2 days ago, but I know you, and I know that you put your heart and soul into everything you do, and I think this is a super important topic because I feel like a lot of people feel stifled in their lives, and grow up being told not to step out of line, not to stick their neck out. So I think people probably have a lot to gain from your work. Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
Our body's ability to create change, our ability, neuroplasticity of our brain to create change, and in particular of our nervous system. And when I'm talking about trauma, I'm usually hand in hand talking about the effects of a dysregulated nervous system and how that impacts pretty much the entirety of our life.